Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Unidentified aircraft struck Damascus International Airport early this morning in a seventh such bombardment of Iranian proxy installations in Syria attributed to Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett made a surprise visit to Moscow on Saturday, as Jerusalem is evidently mediating between Russia and Ukraine. The International Atomic Energy Agency reaches an agreement with Tehran to expedite open investigations regarding nuclear particles that were uncovered in Iran in undeclared locations. Terror has once again plagued Jerusalem's Old City over the weekend when an Arab resident of an East Jerusalem neighborhood stabbed and wounded two police officers at the entrance to the Temple Mount before Israeli troops managed to neutralize the threat.
היום בשעה 4:30 לפנות בוקר הגיע מחבל לשערי העיר העתיקה באחד מהכניסות לשערי הר הבית, ניסה לדקור שוטרים שעמדו במקום בעזרת סכין שהייתה ברשותו. במהלך האירוע השוטרים הגיבו במהירות, בנחישות, נטרלו את המפגע ומנעו פגיעה בחפים מפשע שהיו שם במקום.
Thankfully, the two injured officers who were admitted to a hospital in Jerusalem for further treatment were diagnosed in light condition. In contrast, medical teams who arrived at the scene of the attack proclaimed that the terrorist has died of his wounds. Turning to Syria, where unidentified aircraft launched a salvo of missiles from the direction of Lebanese airspace toward multiple targets in the vicinity of Damascus. According to a Syrian military source who was quoted by the regime-run Sana news agency, the aerial strike was launched at about 5 o'clock this morning. The Syrian military source further asserted that Syria's aerial defense array confronted the incoming missiles and downed most of them. Nevertheless, the projectiles, which penetrated Syria's aerial defense systems, caused extensive material losses and also claimed the lives of two individuals. It is important to know that intelligence sources have confirmed to TV7 that the targeted installations included infrastructure near Damascus International Airport, which were utilized by Iranian proxy militias. And while Syria attributed responsibility to Israel, the IDF spokesperson's unit did not confirm or deny its alleged responsibility in response to TV7's request for comment. In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett made a surprise visit to Moscow on Saturday, where he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Following their meeting, which lasted for about 2.5 hours, the Israeli leader traveled to Berlin, where he met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for roughly 1.5 hours before traveling back to Israel.
חזרתי לפני כמה שעות ממוסקבה ומברלין. נסעתי לשם במטרה לסייע בהידברות בין כל הצדדים, כמובן עם ברכת הדרך ובעידוד של כל השחקנים. מטבע הדברים אני לא יכול להרחיב יותר, אנחנו נמשיך לסייע ככל שנתבקש. גם אם הסיכוי לא גדול. ברגע שיש אפילו פתח קטן ויש לנו את הגישה לכל הצדדים ואת היכולת, אני רואה זאת כחובתנו המוסרית לעשות כל ניסיון. כל עוד הנר דולק, חייבים להתאמץ, חייבים, ואולי עוד אפשר לפעול.
It is important to know that since meeting with President Putin on Saturday, Premier Bennett held 3 consecutive phone conversations with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And while Kiev said it deeply appreciates Jerusalem's efforts to broker peace, it continues to urge the Israeli government to sell it weaponry, even though it understands the complexities related to its request.
So the first message is thank you for the peace effort, and this is priceless for us. Honestly, I do believe whatever can be done, what the Prime Minister told yesterday, even if it's just 1% of success, he will try to do it, and I do believe the same. Even if the percentage is limited, still we have to work out everything possible in order to achieve peace. So this is much more important than, for example, sales of weapon or munition, etc., that we are still fighting with the Israeli government on the side issue, but because of your limitations, we do understand them. But for me, as an ambassador, clearly this effort is much more important if it will bring the result.
While Israel seemingly shies away from selling Ukraine weaponry, it is determined to contribute with humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainian people and is providing a safe haven to Ukrainian refugees, Jews, and non-Jews alike. Moreover, the conflict in Eastern Europe has driven many Ukrainian Jews to reconsider their intention of immigrating to Israel.
אנחנו נערכים לגל עלייה משמעותי בעקבות המצב. כעת המערכת מכינה תרחישים לקליטת מספרים שונים של עולים, והיא תציג זאת השבוע בפני הקבינט. זה אתגר למדינת ישראל, אבל צריך לומר, זה אתגר שעמדנו בו בעבר פעם אחר פעם. רגעים כאלה שבהם העולם עומד בפני טלטלה, ויהודים כבר לא בטוחים במקום שבו הם נמצאים, הם מזכירים לכולנו כמה חשוב שיש בית ליהודים באשר הם, כמה חשוב שיש לנו את מדינת ישראל.
The Israeli leader also seized the opportunity to address the nuclear talks with Iran, including specifically an arrangement that was reached between the Islamic Republic and the International Atomic Energy Agency, as part of which the latter rejected closing outstanding investigations into nuclear particles that were uncovered in undeclared locations in Iran.
בנוגע לשיחות על חזרה להסכם הגרעין בווינה. במהלך סוף השבוע קרה דבר משמעותי וחיובי. ראש סבא, רפאל גרוסי, ביקר בטהרן והחליט לא לענות לתביעה האיראנית לסגור את כלל התיקים הפתוחים תחת לחץ פוליטי. זאת החלטה מקצועית חשובה של הסוכנות ושל גרוסי שלא נענו ללחץ האיראני.
International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi concluded a visit to Tehran on Saturday after managing to secure a joint statement that included an arrangement which aims to settle outstanding investigations by early June. However, upon return to Vienna, the IAEA chief emphasized that finalizing the investigations remains contingent on cooperation from the Islamic Republic of Iran.
The other day, maybe somebody here, asked me, what does it take for you to close it? For Iran to cooperate. If Iran cooperates, we have a good process. Maybe we don't even need to get to June. If Iran does not cooperate, mind you, it's not the board. I would consider that, of course, the board has its competencies and I don't dispute them. But I, as inspector, if I may say it like this, as Director General of the IAEA, would not cease to put questions and continue the process.
Director General Grossi further asserted, however, that the current disposition to conclude the open investigations are within the best attainable circumstances, within limitations of the agreed-upon framework. It is important to highlight nonetheless that while the IAEA attained a window of opportunity to demand for answers regarding the open investigations, it continues to fly blind in all that relates to accumulated data that will only be turned over if the watered-down version of a nuclear agreement is revived.
This, as you know, is contingent to the negotiations on the return to the JCPOA. We did not discuss it this time because we are continuing with this interim sort of arrangement we have, which you are familiar with, which has allowed us to continue with certain monitoring activities pending the full return to JCPOA. So there was actually no need to consider that since our activities are continuing. They are uninterrupted within the format that has been agreed with Iran, which is, as you know, basically that they keep the information until there is a return to the agreement.
It is important to highlight that Iran continues to reject a revival of a watered-down version of the 2015 nuclear agreement unless three remaining demands are met, one of which includes the closing of the open investigations of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Therefore, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh asserted that the timeline for the talks will ensue accordingly.
زمانبندی هایی که در توافق که در حال انجام هست در وین دیده شده به نوعی هست که این بسته شدن این سوالات پیش از اونها انجام میشه. اجازه بدید من بیش از این رو باز نکنم، ولی دو مسیر متفاوت فنی بوده.
Asked about the stressed urgency by the West to reach an agreement immediately, Khatibzadeh asserted that fulfilling Tehran's demands cannot be met overnight. Moreover, Iran continues to claim that if the United States concedes to Iran's demands, an agreement remains attainable.
توافقی که در وین داره انجام میشه یک توافقی هست که مسیر بازگشت ایالات متحده رو در ازای پایبندی کامل و انجام تعهدات ایالات متحده در ذیل برجام تعریف میکنه. این یک مسیر یک شبه نخواهد بود برای ایالات متحده و چند ماهی طول خواهد کشید. ایالات متحده اگر رویکرد منطقی داشته باشه و دغدغه 4+1 و ایران رو در نظر بگیره و این درخواست ها پاسخ مناسبی از طرف واشنگتن داده بشه، در کمترین زمان توافق در دسترس است.
Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's daily prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you to persist in prayer for the situation revolving Russia and Ukraine, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, in addition to our ongoing prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you a Shavuot Tov u'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.